Welcome back to Raptor-One.
Raptor-One, Voyagers of the Stars. Season 2, Chapter 19, Vigil Bend. The laughter had gone to bed, but the chalk dust still clung in the seams where elbows had rested and mugs had been thumped for emphasis. Darrow's lopsided rope swan lay unraveled on the galley table like a shed skin. The hinge Varric had carried around, part talisman, part threat, sat in old pain, its click a tired confession. The bowls were quiet. Not empty, quiet, listening. The ember, usually generous with warmth after a good night, held its heat close, as if someone had cupped a hand around the flame and said hush. "Bank," Saran said, soft. It was a ritual, not a command, and the crew obliged without the clatter of duty. Ira accounted for slow. Tessa threaded her hum beneath, late by a hair. The hood breathed the pride out of the room and returned boredom. You could work inside. Only then did anyone touch the board. Ira laid down a thin strip of copper and pressed it flat with two fingertips. It was mostly blank, a line, a hesitation, a black notch like a swallowed word. She chalked Vigil Bend in the margin and left the letters unadorned. It announced itself, Chiron said, the tokens in his palm clacking once, then deciding even that was too talkative. Saran nodded. "We don't answer an announcement with a speech." They looked to each of them in turn. "We do the small things right." Varric toggled the hinge to new bruise, TCK, quick and contrite, then back to old pain. "My nephew fixed it," he said, half to himself, and left the switch where pity lives. "Ugly's ready." Darrow checked the lean guides along both corridors, palms riding the dull ceramic posts like a priest's last pass along pews before doors open. Furniture's where it belongs. Talon cut 3 shallow timings into scrap and struck through 2 without sentiment. One knife. Once. Chiron stamped erasure posture into the room the way other people draft letters. Inventory interval. Dull, fractionally wrong. The space took the hint and lost the appetite for names. Cyrus set his tin on the slab, no comment, and after a second, rotated it until the words faced himself alone. He kept the blind lens down at his hip and the urge to raise it where it belonged. In the pocket of a past he was learning how to fold. Tessa loosened and retied the ember's felt sling, testing the isolation mount with her thumbnail until the cradle made rhythm into flooring instead of song. "It'll keep time," she said. "It won't teach." The elder leaned in the doorway like a part of the frame. "Leave room," they said. "Habit, blessing." "Blind lens," the organizer added, smiling at Cyrus with the kind of permission that, properly given, feels like a weight shared. "Bring 8, the tall median intoned, and the joke inside the phrase, warmed by use, kept the corridor from deciding it had discovered them. They took their chairs. The ring agreed. The ribs said yes. Gray River's great slow throat swallowed them without a word. At first, Vigil Bend hit its hands. Nothing dramatic, no lattice, no swarm of threads, no rubric asking them to rank their own worthiness. The tests here, Ira had said once when she was still learning the difference between faith and doctrine, would be about keeping. Who watches, keeps. Who keeps, commands. Who commands, endures. They felt it as a shift in the way corners behaved. Hallways that had always been merely long now looked back. The console glass behaved like a pond. It showed you yourself and did not ripple when you leaned too close. "Check in," Cyrus said, because good luck arrives on a whisper. "Here," Tessa answered. "No beacon." He swallowed. "Hungry, steady," he said, and watched the corridor listen for the word hungry like a hound scenting meat. He let it find nothing to chase. Ira made a mark on the copper, just a rest, thin as a hair, placed where a watcher would put a breath, and left it there, a stumble you could be grateful for. The first sign arrived as almost nothing. A line of text in the lower corner of Saran's panel that was not a status and not a fault. Review in progress. The captain didn't look at it again. Inventory, Saran said aloud, as one names what a thing is not. Late, plain, stubborn. Their hands did not leave the board. Lean right? Darrow asked the air softly, the way you ask whether rain thinks it plans to come in. Not yet, Chiron said, listening with the face he reserves for almost lies. This one wants to be invited. It wants you to watch it watch you. So we don't, Talon murmured. They turned their slate face down, then realized even that gesture had a little theater in it, and let their hands simply rest. The bend kept pace with them, nudging reflections closer, an extra gleam in the glass where no lamp stood, a shadow at the end of the corridor shaped like the person you most trust when you are tired. Varric glanced once and never again. Looks like my father, he said, the words dry enough to refuse the room purchase. He set the hinge clicking in a rhythm fit for rain gutters. He can wait. Cyrus caught his own mouth, turned up the way it does when applause is near. There was no applause. He pressed his thumb into the tin's lid until the desire trembled and fell back where it belonged. Tessa's knuckle brushed his. It was an ordinary touch, which kept it safe. Vigil Ben tested eyes. It itched under the skin where attention lives. It invited exactness the way some rooms invite confessions. It wanted their gaze to become a grip. Ira laughed, not loudly but genuinely, at a nothing, at the way her hair had gone stubborn under the hood, at the scuff on her shoe, and the sound made the watching falter. Rooms that collect loyalties do not know what to do with jokes that do not require an audience. Put down 3 rests, Saran said. 3? Ira asked. 2 would be a pattern, Chiron said. 3 is a pause long enough to starve a habit. She chalked them in the corners like the memory of windows. The bend looked into them and, seeing only silence, had to pretend it intended to be polite. They passed a junction where the river's ribs made a subtle V and the air thickened the way kitchens do when someone sensible turns the knob from boil to simmer. In the glass, a phrase tried to draw itself in a handwriting that did not believe in erasers. Who keeps commands? Rope, Saran said, not because there were threads, there were not, but because rope is what you put between a mouth and your throat when someone insists on speaking in imperatives. Darrow looped a coil over the console's edge. The phrase softened. Words prefer to sit down where rope has made a chair. The bowls murmured present, not as a chorus, but as a few voices that had been practicing listening to each other. The ember's warmth traveled the hull like a story told at a table where no one is writing anything down. Tell me what keeps looks like if it isn't a fist, Varric said into the air, and it wasn't a challenge so much as the way people who have been hurt worst learn to negotiate. It is hands under a bowl, Ira said, immediate, so the soup doesn't scald a child who is still learning where to put their mouth. Or a door held open by a hinge that is allowed to be ugly, Talon added. Or a light that waits instead of flares, Tessa said, glancing toward the memory of the patient glow they'd left behind. Cyrus breathed and almost ruined it with a quip about subscribers. He didn't. He let the line arrive late, plain, or a lens that stays down. The corridor did not clap. Good. They marked the bend's first ask for what it was. Not a command, not a lie, not even a demand. An expectation shaped like a question that wanted to be true because it felt like work. Who watches, keeps. Ira wrote maybe beside it on her slate and set the slate face up so the room could see it and be annoyed. The second sign came as a courtesy that had not been requested. Lights along the starboard corridor adjusted to a hue that makes skin look trustworthy in photographs. Most rooms cannot produce such a color. Only rooms that have been taught that witnesses are alters. Chiron made a noise that belonged in libraries. Primer's leftovers, he said. It's dressed the watching in clothes. Saran did not dim them. They did not brighten them. They let the color have its vanity and refused to put their faces in it. Check in, Tessa said, because good rules are a ladder out of wells. Here, Cyrus said. No beacon. He let his tongue sit still a second longer than comfort prefers. One sentence banked. Good correction, she said, and because Vigil Bend enjoyed the taste of that phrase, she made sure to say it without sugar. The Bend took another step toward honesty. It showed them, without being dramatic about it, what happens when you look longest at what you fear most. Your attention starts writing law. On the aft camera, a door they had closed yesterday was shown open. On the port panel, a signature line appeared beneath review in progress. In the overhead reflection, Saran's hand looked like it had moved when it had not. Knife, Talon said, and set the shallow once. Just enough to convince the room that the rhythm it meant to build had a limp it hadn't noticed. They erased the stroke from their slate as soon as it landed in the world. Never twice in the same room. Varric took pity on temptation and set the hinge to my nephew fixed it. The sound you make when you have done your best with what you had and won't be proud about it. Vigil Bend likes perfect. It despises competence that refuses applause. The reflection blinked. Darrow laughed at nothing again and tied a knot one-handed while he wasn't even looking. Rope behaves most honestly when it's ignored. Chiron slid a clay token over the word review until only view showed, and then slid it further until nothing did. We do not consent to observation being policy, he told the bulkhead, like a man reminding a friend not to hand his keys to his worst day. Bank, Saran said again. Not because anything had been spent yet, but because you don't wait until you're hungry to make bread. They stopped in the hall under the hood and did the work that keeps a ship from turning into a stage. Ember to the basin's lip, Ira's count laid gently under it until the water agreed not to get ideas. Tessa's hum placed so low it might have been a floor. Varric's heat slope folded into weather, nothing to bill. Talon's knife sheathed. Darrow's coils off throats and onto furniture. Chiron's tokens made tidy stacks. The flake of brittle primer doctrine stayed hidden beneath one, unread but not forgotten. Cyrus's tin where he could see it and the lens where it could not see him. Saran's pencil wrote nothing. The restraint was recorded by nobody, and that was the point. In the lull, Vigil Bend tried exactly once to be charming. It threw up a picture so gentle even suspicion slowed. The crew at the galley table, hands all in at the center like a story about teams. The caption tried to write itself, silver as a promise. Who watches, keeps. Tessa reached and turned the screen off with 2 fingers, as if extinguishing a candle before leaving a room. We keep because we are kept, she said, to Cyrus or the Ember or both. Not because a corridor wrote it down. He pressed his mouth against her hairline in the most uncinematic way possible. The room, offered nothing it could multiply, had to eat its own quiet. Third watch carried them deeper. Vigil Bend's ribs grew narrow, then generous, then narrow again, as if testing whether constriction or relief made better law. They offered neither. A whisper came and went like a thought you've decided not to keep. Who commands, endures. Varric made the hinge sneeze. Ira drew a rest over the words and didn't blow the chalk dust away. Talon pictured the knife and did not move. Darrow shrugged at the air in a way that would look like disrespect to anyone who had never learned the language of patience. Chiron looked at Saran and did not ask for a proof of leadership the room could frame. Saran looked back and did not perform captaincy. The bowls hummed present once, then held their peace. At the lip of the Bend's throat, before the river flowed into whatever tests were waiting to be tests, the panels cleared as if a senior clerk had come through to tidy madness into minutes. A single line remained on the board, small and ordinary as a note to buy onions. Keeper's registry available. Cyrus wiped a hand over his face. What's that even? Not ours, Chiron said. A list of everyone who looked too long and decided their gaze was a fence. We don't read it, Saran said. Not stern. Plain. We don't become what it inventories. They left the page unopened. They left the lights unflattered. They let the Bend consider the possibility that it had been invited and no one had taken the bait. Check in, Tessa said one last time before sleep. Here, Cyrus answered. No beacon. He glanced at the tin, the lens, the face of a man who had learned to spend himself slower. One sentence banked. After, she said, and they both heard the word say when it matters, not when it's hungry. They slept, or the crew-shaped approximation of sleep that ships permit. Vigil Bend kept watch on them, watching it not at all. It adjusted a light, found no face to flatter. It wrote a prompt, found no hand to sign. It conjured a reflection and met a hinge playing rain. When the hood sighed the pride out of the morning, the Bend's patience had not broken and neither had theirs. Somewhere beyond the next kilometer of caution, the real trial waited. For now, the ship had remembered the oldest trick of surviving rooms that want your loyalty. Let them know they are not your mirror. The ember burned like bread that intends to be breakfast. The bowls hummed present, even if the note contained a trace of nerves. Varric flexed his bat arm and found it honest. Darrow looped a coil over a guide, and it looked like a hand left ready on a table, palm up. Talon checked the knife and decided not to sharpen. Ira touched the copper strip and felt it cool to her skin. Chiron stacked tokens, then unstacked them, then left them imperfect on purpose. Saran touched the board and didn't write a thing. They moved late. They moved plain. They moved stubborn. Vigil Bend breathed in, preparing its next ask. Raptor-One did not lean forward to hear it. The notice stayed in the corner like a fly that refuses to land. Keeper's registry available. No chime. No highlight. Just availability, which is how some traps are beautiful. Don't swat it, Chiron said, as if to a child and a god at once. It wants to be the only thing moving in the room. They did not touch the notice. They rearranged the furniture of the hour instead. Darrow set a short length of rope on the console edge, the way you lay a napkin where a guest can reach it without making conversation about cloth. Varric nudged the hinge to my nephew, fixed it, and left it there until pity sank into the seams. Tessa adjusted the embers, sling a thumb with, and hummed under the note the bowls made when they are almost, but not yet, singing. Talon scribed a shallow timing in Vigil dialect, then crossed it out so the room would not know it had been done. Ira chalked a rest the size of a postage stamp exactly where a headline would like to stand. Cyrus rotated his "No comment" tin until the label faced himself alone. Chiron placed a clay token, not on the notice, but where his hand would naturally go if he were tempted, a doorstop for habit. Saran watched everyone do small things until the room grew bored of being impressive. The notice waited. Available, the way forecourts wait for knees. A second line breathed onto the glass as if to help them help themselves. Request badge. The word badge wore a smile inside it. Don't say it out loud, Ira murmured. Cyrus's mouth had already formed the B. He swallowed it like a man deciding against sugar. Check in? Here, Tessa said, palm brushing his sleeve. No beacon. Hungry, steady, he answered, and the Ben leaned close as if hunger were a profession. They drifted into a corridor whose walls had been polished by other people's attention. Mirrors where there should have been dull steel. Corners softened by the traffic of watchfulness. In each reflective plane a little prompt waited, polite as folded towels. Keep who? Varric snorted. They've put shepherd hooks everywhere. Hooks for the hands that want to be needed, Chiron replied. A face, very like Saran's, practiced a kind expression in the glass and failed. Captains always look like they're applying for the job they already have. Next to that face, a small overlay showed a row of icons that wanted to be authority without the mess of service. Bell, ledger, stamp. The kind of tools that look like a chest and turn into a leash. The overlay pulsed, helpful. You may keep crew/corridor/record. Record, Cyrus said, almost laughing, almost sobbing. They're offering me my old sin. Let them offer, Saran said. Offers get tired too. They kept walking. The band walked with them, lining their path with forms no one had asked for. Keep, Tess's HUM, with a toggle for intensity. Keep, Varric's hinge, with a slider for consistency. Keep, Darrow's rope, with a checkbox for binding permissions. Keep, Ira's rests, with a drop-down labeled audibility. Keep, Talon's knife, with a red label that said expert mode. Keep, Cyrus's lens, with a bright button, go responsible live. Responsible, Cyrus repeated, like a man tasting a fruit that turns out to be meat. He put his hand flat on the tin. The tin did not argue because tins keep excellently when asked to be boring. Tessa reached her hum lower, so low it was the flooring and not the song. If we accept any of these, we'll be keeping from each other, she said. Exactly, Chiron answered. The registry sells fences and calls them embraces. The notice in the corner changed its outfit again. Badge makes you safe. From whom? Varric asked the air, and the hinge's old pain clicked once in what might have been laughter. At the junction where Vigil Bend turned left to admire itself and right to lay in wait, a table rose from the deck. Not a metaphor, an honest table, waist-high, with 7 small discs set upon it. Each disc bore a little symbol: rope, hinge, ember, rest, knife, lens, pencil, etched so shallow that you could rub the marks away with the flat of a thumb. Badges, Ira breathed. Tokens, Talon corrected. They want to become badges in our hands. That's the trick. Saran did not approach. Darrow? They said. He stepped forward like a man entering a waltz with a sleeping dog. He lifted the rope disc and felt its want. A soft pressure that said, put me on, be the one who keeps. He set it back down. He tried the rest and heard the faintest whisper of applause. He set it down and wiped his palm on his trouser leg. We don't put these on, he said. We put them away. Where? Varric asked. On furniture, Darrow replied reflexively, and that was how decisions are born. They borrowed the table without letting it become an altar. Darrow looped a coil through the disc rack. Iris set the rest disc under a cup. It behaved like a coaster and became as important. Talon wedged the knife disc under a wobbling foot and turned aristocracy into a shim. Varric tucked the hinge disc into the hinges housing where a washer had always been needed. Clicks steadied. Doctrine frowned. Chiron slid the pencil under his token stack and declared the stack not straight on purpose. Cyrus placed the lens disc behind the tin so it would be useful as weight, not as permission. Tessa tied the ember disc into the sling so it could learn from warmth without learning to demand. The table sagged as if a sermon had been taken off it. The corridor's mirrors misted and had to pretend it was weather. Registry? Saran asked the notice mildly. It shifted twice, as if embarrassed to be seen without a script. Request bad. Request for. Request. Withdrawn. That was almost an apology, Iris said. Rooms don't apologize, Chiron murmured. They just stop pretending. The bending part of Vigil Bend did not give up. It tried something kinder. It brought them other people's keeping. Screens flickered, not just reflections, replays. A mechanic in a scarred wharf checking a tally each night for mouths she had promised to feed. A captain placing their own name last, and then not letting it be said at all. A watcher who stayed awake while everyone else slept and learned to love resentment like a pet. The last one lingered, familiar in all the wrong ways. The watcher had a badge. The badge had a registry. The registry had a prayer, written neatly across the bottom where signatures usually live. Who watches, keeps. Who keeps, commands. Who commands, endures. Iris' throat tightened. I have said smaller versions of that, she confessed. So have I, Saran said, as if the words tasted of tin. Cyrus leaned closer, then stepped back like a man recognizing his own reflection in a window at night. I have sold smaller versions of that. Then we put it where it belongs, Tessa said, on a shelf we can dust. Darrow reached out and pinched the line off the screen like taking lint from a friend's shoulder. It came away as ash. He scattered it on the table. The table did not light. Varric did something stranger. He toggled the hinge in sync with memory until the replay's rhythm lined up with the sound of old pain refusing to be weaponized. The image unlearned its drumbeat and sat down. It looked like a person again. People are easier to forgive than slogans. Talon slid the small knife under the screen and tilted the frame 1 degree. The prayer rolled crooked and lost its dignity. Chiron flipped his tokens, heads, then tails, then both off the table and onto the floor, so he had to crouch to retrieve them. The room, confronted with a grown man kneeling to catch what he had refused twice, forgot to look powerful. Bank, Saran said, not because they had spent anything, but because saving is something you do on purpose when a place tries to teach you that spending is love. They returned to the hall and did the ordinary work of not becoming priests in rooms that want congregations. Ember to the basin's lip, Ira's late count made the heat remember it was for soup. Tessa's hum under that, floorboards, not choir stalls. Varric's slope into weather, no line for a clerk to draw. Darrow hung the rope by the door, the end tucked away like an untold story. Talon wiped the one shallow mark they had allowed themselves from their slate. Chiron put the brittle witness equals law flake back under a token where it could do no magic. Cyrus set the tin beside the lens disc and felt how a little weight can keep a temptation from rolling. Saran wrote nothing. They looked like a person whose job is to keep rooms from becoming stages, which is not what the registry thinks command is. Vigil Ben sighed through the vents like a disappointed teacher. Who keeps commands? No, Saran said, not loud. Who keeps? The panels hesitated. Then, in a motion so tiny a different crew would have missed it, replaced the notice with a different invitation. Decline badge. Progress, Chiron said dryly. Practice, Ira corrected. The room is practicing permission. Cyrus reached for the button out of old reflex and stopped an inch above the glass. He smiled, small and late, at his own restraint, then put his hand down. It hurt us, Tessa said. It's testing whether we hurt ourselves, Talon replied. They slept badly but together. Vigil Bend kept a decent distance, like a neighbor with opinions learning how to wave without offering casserole. Third watch, the Bend tried one last courtesy, the kind that makes fools of careful people. It put a single name on the glass, small and ready to be erased if only someone would touch it. Keeper, vacant. Tessa's breath caught. If we put nobody, it will make up a ghost to wear the badge. If we put somebody, it will try to make us grateful, Chiron said. Then we put something, Ira suggested, surprising herself. They brought the table back. Darrow placed the rope coil where the slot wanted a name. Ira slid the rest disc beside it. Talon's knife, sheathed, went next, tilted so it could not be mistaken for eagerness. Varric set the hinge, set to my nephew fixed it, at the back like a bone. Tessa tied the ember disc on top with a bow ugly enough to make Doctrine sneeze. Cyrus put the tin at the edge as a promise to forget to perform. Chiron left the token stack lopsided. Keeper, the display said, uncertain, then, perhaps embarrassed, revised. Kept, present. Vigil Bend blinked, once, like a person thinking better of a remark. The mirrors fogged and did not clear. The table sank back into the deck by the thickness of a story ending where it should. Saran exhaled a breath that could almost have been mistaken for relief. We'll get the real test tomorrow, they said. This was just the jacket fitting itself around our shoulders. Check in? Cyrus asked, because rules are there so you don't have to build a new spine every room. Here, Tessa answered. No beacon. Steady, he said, and for a moment Vigil Bend seemed to accept that as a form. They banked the not-quite victory and let the ship carry them a little deeper into a place that wants watchmen and was given a kitchen instead. The ember burned like bread that declines to audition for cake. The bowls hummed present without being asked to harmonize. The hinge said my nephew fixed it, and no one turned toward the sound with gratitude large enough to be weaponized. Outside the glass, a pale word formed and drifted, as if even the Bend had earned a rest. Later. Good, Saran said. We like later. They went to their bunks and taught their nerves how to sleep against a door left politely unlocked. The registry kept its empty parenthesis. The badges warmed a table leg, a sling, a hinge. The notice waited for a finger that didn't come. Raptor-One went on being a ship that keeps without commanding. Beyond the next turn, Vigil Bend arranged something with teeth and practice. The crew did not hurry to meet it. Late, plain, stubborn, they let the room get impatient first.
Thank you for listening. If you would like to be notified about upcoming releases to the Raptor-One series, please subscribe. This has been a Bad Karma Drone production.